This movie is one word: breathe. I think everyone has heard about Todd McFarlane's Spawn comic. He's up there in superheroes. Whether you like him for his tormented life, the battles between heaven and hell, his costume, his powers, the gore fest, or you just like a badass character design, McFarlane's style is very iconic. The 1997 movie was anything but. Even with it being in the early days of comic book movies, the film did a lot of things that doomed itself. The first thing was making it PG-13. You can try to make him work with a bigger audience, but you lose the core essence of Spawn. That pain, that anger, that suffering needs to be seen. The biggest thing lost was the character building. Spawn shares a lot of elements to the first RoboCop movie. You have a character that was once human that dies in a horrific manner. If you have very little time with your main before death, you need to make a strong impression. Alex Murphy's death in RoboCop is horrible, and his fight to bring back his humanity is what the audience attaches to, because we saw a father, a husband, and his friendship with Lewis. We got to see who he was before his death. Spawn got none of this. Instead, the movie was built around showcasing cool CGI sequences. Anything that didn't show CG was gone, all the way down to the characters' motivations. Here's a bit of backstory about Spawn. Al Simmons isn't your regular hero. He's a highly trained military officer who joined a special branch of the CIA, doing the dirty work around the world no one wants to be connected to. His job kills many people, civilian casualties included, eventually betrayed by his commanding officer in this messed up game for hell. The armies of hell need a leader, and they wanted Simmons by manipulating and destroying what he loves. And using his commanding officer, it built up his anger and rage so that once he lost all of it, this would force him to accept becoming the new Hellspawn, leading the apocalypse on Earth. That is the basic gist of Spawn's origin story. The movie covered all the core elements and characters, from Clown, who was assigned to Spawn to make sure he would complete his task, Jason Wynn, Jessica Priest, the two who killed Simmons, Cog, who is basically Spawn's mentor, Terry, Al's close friend, and Wanda, Spawn's former wife. The casting of the movie was mostly fine. John Leguizamo had to act for that hellish costume. He played a good clown. Michael Jai White was a decent Spawn. He brought that pain and hardship to the role whenever he got to do that stuff on screen. The problems come down to pacing. Spawn is very complicated. It can't just be summed up into heaven versus hell. You have to establish what is possible in this universe. It involves magic. On top of that, Simmons is an anti-hero. He's not the good guy. He will kill if necessary. This brings in a lot of personal problems. One of the key elements of Spawn. Where does he sit? Is he a hero in this issue, or is he a villain? There are times he's stuck in his thoughts with this. All this is rushed through. There's no moment between Al and Wanda before his death. We barely even get to know that Terry is his friend. It just starts off with an assassin mission that goes bad. Al is fed up killing the wrong targets, wants to quit his job. We barely get to know Priest and Wynn past, they're the bad guys, you must hate them. It makes the comic look shallow and the characters mean nothing. You already hurt fans with it being PG-13. Next, this rushed introduction to Spawn's human life. I'm not a huge fan of the Spawn comic. I'm a casual reader. The movie was my introduction to the universe, and I was confused all over the place. The action was cool, but I didn't know who anyone was. There was no time to give me a reason to feel for them. When Al got betrayed, I really didn't care because within 5 minutes, Simmons murdered some people. We get one argument between his boss about it being wrong.
And I want out.
You don't quit us, son.
And then his death. Without showing his normal life, I can't get a connection. Okay, you think there's flashbacks later in the film that shows more of his past life, but because the movie is rushing all over the place, nothing gets the time to work. This is another movie that feels like 20 or even 40 minutes was cut out. There's even 2 blatant plot problems later in the film. The next thing that feels off is the lack of blood and gore. Even in the director's cut version, it doesn't help. I've seen the TV censored version of RoboCop, and that showed more blood and gore than this R-rated movie did. When Priest shoots Al as they're double-crossing him, there's no blood. Most fights are pretty tame, And they go out of their way to have Spawn get to the point of almost cursing, and he just doesn't do it. They pull that like 6 times.
Get away from me, you fudge-packing midget.
And thanks to the horrible editing, you can see they knew the film was going to confuse the audience. Not only does the movie lack character building, it doesn't establish the fantasy elements. You get confused more while they explain things over and over on scenes that don't need it. Like Cog does a voiceover that 5 years passed when Al got killed and was being reborn.
But Malbolgia kept him secluded in darkness for 5 long years.
2 minutes later, they show all that.
Will allow me to kickstart your memory.
Why are you doing a voiceover here? Is this where M. Night Shyamalan got his inspiration with the Last Airbender voiceover exposition movie? And for the stuff that did need exposition, got nothing. Example? The movie does not explain his abilities, his limits, at all. So you end up seeing him do things where you go, oh great, Spawn's pulling a Superman blue-eye beam power now. Spawn is a mixture of biological and magic. Simmons is trapped between the living and the dead. His powers come from a symbiote. Yes, very similar to Black Suit Spider-Man. Spawn's body is infused with a special energy called necroplasm. This is what powers him and his suit. His suit is not battle armor like Iron Man. It has limits because you have to put limits on magical beings. If they can do virtually anything, this makes it almost impossible to write a story. So his power source, the necroplasm, is finite. There's a ticking clock. The suit feeds on it. In fact, in the comics, he has less ability now because of the amount of times he used it up over the years. The movie completely drops this.
Take care of your powers. When you drain them, you die.
So when you see him pull powers out of nowhere, you think he's a Deus Ex. Oh, and that training sequence with Cog? Horse garbage. One, Cog is so underutilized, you don't get why Simmons is even listening to him. You don't really know who he is until literally the end of the film. Imagine in Empire Strikes Back, Luke met Yoda for the first time. He says a few lines, disappears, then you cut out all the goofy stuff and the training and the revelation. That's Cog. The training scene, freaking joke. You can't even use there's a montage or time jump. 2 minutes pass and Al knows how to use all his suit powers. The chains, his cape, his magic, almost like something was cut out.
Your cape has its own powers.
I have to get to Wanda's, old man.
Speaking of cut out, remember those 2 plot hole issues I mentioned? For most of the movie, Al didn't know he was being used by Clown on both ends. Clown was the one who told Wynn to kill Al, while Clown went to Al to build up his hatred and told him where Wynn is to kill him. He has no idea that Clown was playing him. After Al fails to kill Wynn, but he did kill Priest, who just dies like nothing and never gets brought up again, and that's because the movie planned for her to come back as she Spawn, but they had no time or the money. You damn sure had no time. You had no time for the freaking plot as it is. Al goes back to the alleyway. Here, he has a friend he can talk to, a young homeless kid named Zach. You don't have to ask, he doesn't get developed past script tool. The scene starts with Zach eating rotten food and a man striking him, which then we find out that's Zach's father. So Al doesn't kill him. And somehow Al will gain the knowledge of Clown's betrayal. There's no scene where Al puts it together. Zach wouldn't have known this secret to tell him. It just goes from Al beat up his father, Al says sorry, starts to talk to Zach. It goes to a scene where Clown is talking to Wynn. We go back to Al and he just knows.
It was you who told Wynn to kill me.
Did Al grab the script or something off camera? This is the worst editing I've seen in a long time. The rest of the movie is just cool CGI action scenes. There's barely any cohesive story to follow. I almost know nothing about the characters beyond their basic attributes. I have no idea what Spawn can do if you only watch the film. What you see, you think he's just a god, and if you're a huge Spawn comic fan, you're disappointed everywhere. There's also one thing, Terry, Al's best friend, was race swapped. It's so pointless. If you want to include additional people into something like this, it's better to create a new character. You don't have lore behind this character to follow. You can do whatever as long as you make the character fit in and have a good purpose. Changing races, etc., it just makes the actor like they're getting a hand-me-down, or it's just a gimmick. We're Hollywood. We're out of ideas. We can't make original properties anymore. What old film can we remake? Oh, we already did remake this? Let's change the character's race to whatever or make a cartoon live action now and call it a day. This is why the movie sucks. It wasn't explained right for casual audiences. It avoided all the depth of the comic while cutting out the visceral elements. You want to see a Spawn closer to the comics? Go watch the HBO animated series. Keith David was perfect as Spawn. The 1997 film, while there is some things I liked, overall it's just dick. I hope if they ever get that second Spawn movie that they've been trying for years to get off the ground, does way better than this first attempt. Jamie Foxx playing Al Simmons right now, I can't see it working, but who knows? I'll give it a chance. But if they screw up this one, I'm not going to bother watching a Spawn movie again. I've been waiting 2 decades. Show me something good. Thanks for checking out the review. Subscribe if you want to see more. And if you remember a movie or a show that's long been forgotten, good or bad, leave it as a suggestion below. I'm always on the lookout for obscured stuff.